Strange Season 3, Episode 6, The Battle of Central Park. Really was excited to see this episode and how everything was going to play out. It didn't play out the way I expected it to in either regard, because at first it was like, okay, things are happening, they're kind of holding stuff off, and Fett eventually does end up making it to the nest, and the plan works out perfectly. I thought for a split second, because they showed him like put the hook on the thing, that the whole thing would break off and the bomb would never actually go off. That's kind of what I thought would happen for a second there, and everything works. I'm like, okay, they took out the nest. They won the park. They took out this really big nest. That's a huge victory for them. And then right after this victory, which I didn't see coming, a huge loss that was way bigger than I initially expected ends up taking place, where everything gets overrun. I think they say like the entire north perimeter is completely wiped out. Of course, that ending shot is just horrible for the city, and they have that marker or the map that kind of shows like the green and the red. And the red at the beginning of the episode is kind of like up here, and you have like the rest of the city, and then it's just like a halfway point where they get Central Park fully. It's not like, oh, there's a nest in Central Park. They just take over Central Park, and then the ending shot is just so many, and they're just kind of spreading throughout and starting to just go down the streets in the middle of the night. So there were a lot of things that I wasn't expecting in this episode. We got to see the characters actually found the former hiding place where they had Zach. Zach also got himself one of the feelers to kind of control and protect him a little bit, which is interesting. I kind of like what they did with that, because it was a moment where of course, like anyone, you'd be freaked out where this thing is in your room the whole time, and it ends up not being overnight or anything, because it's like, oh, excuse me, the feeler is here to protect you and stuff. And then with the big battle happening, it's like, okay, well, we introduced her to you, and now it's time to go. So they don't go through all the stuff I was instantly thinking of, like, he's going to be stuck with this thing in his room. How is that going to work? How well is he going to be able to get to sleep? But he seems to bond with her way more than I was expecting. To be totally honest, it was very minor, but it was simple stuff like, you don't have to sit on the couch the whole time. You can come over here, and I thought, he'd actually read to her. But I thought that was interesting. I was like, all right, he bonded with her much faster than I honestly expected. So I'm kind of excited to see what they do with that. We're going to get to see sort of a new base of operations for, wherever they're going to end up keeping Zach. So I'm actually kind of excited for that, just because it will be a new location. And I'm curious if they'll change things up where he'll know, like, hey, we were in this location where I didn't even get to know what time it was. It was a late night motorcycle. But now they might kind of change things up a little bit. Like, all right, we might need, sight lines where we can see out windows and stuff like that. So I'm kind of excited to see what they do, if they decide to kind of stick with the underground thing, or if they'll go above ground, especially, with that ending scene where they clearly have taken over a giant chunk of the city, broken through, the entire, north perimeter. They've kind of got control over way more territory now, so they could easily move and just stay in the streets, and no one's going to risk that with, once the news kind of gets out, like, this is what happened in Central Park. No one's going to really risk that. And I don't know if they're going to have a scene in the opening of the next episode where people are just kind of getting, massacred, at night. But I feel like that's the case. These things are going to try to break into, basically every place that has a human in it before daybreak. And I feel like that's a scene that would logically appear, in the next episode. Maybe there aren't a lot of people, around Central Park. But, it's hard to tell. There's random people in all sorts of places. So, might get to see that happen. Might not. But I just love the way it ended, because it was so devastating. And like I said, I didn't think they were going to win to begin with. But then it worked, and I was like, oh, he got the nest. And then it was like, all right, whatever. We sacrificed that one little nest. And then it was basically like 4 nests combined, it seemed, just destroying all these perimeters and, flooding the entire park. So it was like, I didn't think they'd win, and then I thought they won, and then the loss that I expected from the beginning was like 3 times worse than what I was initially expecting. So I like the way that it all played out. I think everything, even leading up to the ending, was actually pretty entertaining as well, because we got to see what happened with Gus and Angel, and them going on basically their final sort of chain gang little mission, where the 2 cops, which I was totally fine that they got killed, but they go in with them, and kind of the big thing is that they introduced this new female character who I don't know if she'll be a big part of the story or anything like that, but she's this woman, and this was one of those things I mentioned before where they just send anybody in there for doing nothing, and she's like, I was scavenging bodies at night and they arrested me, like, for nothing. So, she gets sent in, and it's like she just happened to be on the thing where it's like you get full pardons if you make it and stuff. And they go through and they have their moment where, she's about to get sent through this tunnel, and they're able to take the cops out. And it could have been so simple. And the guy shot the woman, which I couldn't believe. I was like, he really killed her just so they couldn't leave, which of course got his head like actually blown off by the shotgun, which was a pretty crazy scene. It was pretty fast. I was kind of surprised that they were able to admittedly kind of get away with that. But I guess FX was kind of pushing the limits on that one. But they killed both of them, and then of course the other two dudes, same thing. If you don't have more than a couple lines or you aren't already a main character, you are gone. Like the first dude who had the golf club, they didn't even show how he died. He just disappeared. It's like, oh, there's his feet under some grates, and he's gone. And then the other dude with the bat, he gets tackled and taken out too. So I was just like, wow, that sucks. Like it's just like I honestly thought that they would all kind of escape, to be totally honest. And then they were getting lost, which I thought was really weird because I'm like, why wouldn't they just go back the way they came? And I guess because there would be other cops there and stuff like that. So I don't know. I guess that's why they didn't do that. But I was like, man, they destroyed those two, and then of course they end up meeting with Fett and Captain Rogers, who is actually the woman that Fett slept with a few episodes ago. They lost all of their people naturally, so of course they team up. Angel ends up going with the girl to kind of get her to safety, and Gus ends up going with the two of them. So they're underground. They get everything done, and like I said, I thought this actually went pretty well. I was surprised how well it went. We had the stuff with Dutch and F early on in the episode when it was actually daylight before they got the news from F. Them trying to figure out the strigoi signals and stuff like that, and basically they just got patterns, and it's like, well, that means something, and they got some big noises here and big noises there, and then not really much else. So they have the patterns, and maybe they got their equipment, because they don't really show exactly what happened with everyone. They don't even really show what happens with Fett, Captain Rogers, and Gus. It's like they show them at the ladder, which they don't even show Gus in that scene, which I thought was really weird because they should all be like right next to each other. But she's talking to Fett, and she's like, you ready to be a hero and stuff. And during that scene, I was like, where is Gus at? Did he just like take off? Like that would be way too risky to try to catch up, with Angel and the woman. So I thought that was kind of weird that he wasn't like right behind them during that scene. But we'll probably get to see what happens with them once the episode starts up. I would assume that that's the same ladder that Fett took in the last episode where he found the nest and everything. So I don't think that would be a smart idea for them to actually go up there. So they might actually be trapped underground, at least for a little bit, depending on how they do the episode, how long it actually stays in in the nighttime portion, going into the next episode. But I'm excited to see where they take things, and of course, the next episode, based on the promo at least, seems to focus quite a bit on F and Dutch continuing on with their research and trying to figure out, this is what's happening here, this is what's happening with this is how they, how their signals work with each other. So, excuse me, I'm excited to see where they go with that. I had a really awesome moment when they actually freaking chopped off Icor's hand. That was an awesome moment for me. I thought for a second, as it was happening, when Icorus ran past F and he's about to use his stinger, I thought for sure that his stinger would come out and Dutch was going to chop his stinger off, because I don't think that actually kills them. I think they do have to still shoot them in the head. They just can't infect other people, and it's a huge, it wounds them like crazy. But I don't think that actually kills them. They just always, kill them right after. Or if you, like, literally rip it out of them, that tends to kill them. They showed that one time. It was like, yeah, if you rip out, like, the whole organ, that probably would mess them up. But I thought for sure that's what was going to happen, and his stinger would get chopped off. And I was like, that would have been so cool. But I like the fact that even his hand got chopped off, because he never gets wounded. He's the one, like they showed the filler in this episode moving around a lot at super speed. But Icorus is always the one. Icorus and the Master are the only two where they really utilize the super speed. And the fillers now too. And I think they did it maybe once or twice, or like a couple of times with Kelly. But it's not even a handful of characters that actually move at super speed. Like, it's the Master, Icorus, I believe they did show Kelly do that before, and the feelers. So, excuse me. It was really cool to see that happen, where even with his super speed and stuff, he got his hand chopped off, and I was like, that's really cool. I don't know if they're gonna collect his hand for data, which I personally think would have been a good idea, even though it's just because he's like the right hand man of the master probably doesn't add to his DNA being any more useful to them. But as far as science goes, you never really know. It's all sort of crazy supernatural science. So I get the feeling that they may have like bagged his hand up, and they might be doing some research on that in the next episode. But I am excited to see where they take it. F now knows that his son is still alive, so that's really good for him. Like I said, I'm excited to see where they end up taking Zach, and what new location we're going to be seeing, what's going to really happen. With a big chunk of the city now officially being taken over by the Strigoi. We didn't get anything from Satrakian and Quinlan, but Quinlan was at least in the promo for the next episode, and his stinger was coming out. So I'm very curious what that's all about, because it's either purposeful and it's just one of his feeding moments, or it was something that just kind of made his stinger come out. It activated that instinct within him. So I am excited to see what the deal was with that scene. But ultimately, I thought this was a really fun episode, and I was having a good time with it. And it was like, it seemed like although certain characters are dying, like when they had Fett go in, and Fett and Rogers went in, and all their team basically all got killed off, and the prisoner guys with Gus and Angel, they got killed off and stuff. But things were kind of continuing on. It's like, all right, they, everything's happening. They're doing this mission. It's like, all right, we haven't gotten any news or anything. We don't know what the heck is happening with Fett. Who knows? For all knows, she's freaking out and stuff. So it's like, I could pull him back, but we got to keep going. Even when things get really crazy, she's like, we can't stop fighting. And then eventually she realizes, like, we just have to, because we're going to lose everything. But it was fun watching it, and it was like, it was scary, but then it got really hopeful, and then it got just horrific for them. And I kind of like that sort of pacing, because I was like, I don't think it'll go good, and then I thought it did, and then it went worse. So I enjoyed that. Kind of the ups and downs of just watching Geraldo go through what she was going through with being unsure, and then getting the confirmation from Fed. That was a really cool moment, because I was thinking, after that scene where she hugged the guy, I can never remember his name, but when they're sitting down and they're just like, this was a good day and stuff, it made me think back to the last season. Like, man, they were just like two random people, and now they're like thick as thieves. And she was just there to rally the people together, and he was the one that convinced her, these people do believe in you, so you have to do this. And he was the one that gave her that confidence. And I remember talking about that before. Like, that's why I really like that guy, because she just wanted to, help the city fight. And he was the one who had to really convince her, like, you've done it now, so you got to go through with it, and I'm here to help you go through with it. And that's how they've kind of stuck together through these past two seasons. And just that moment where they're sitting, like, this was a good day, like, just that moment, I was like, this is really cool. Like, I love the bonding that they have between these two characters who just came in the last season, and it's just like, they just work together. They have kind of the same struggles, and they have the same, the same highs and the same lows. So it was just a little thing where I was like, I just really love the chemistry that they have between both the actors, as well as just how they have the characters kind of deal with each other. And it was just kind of cool. It's just something I noticed when I was watching it. I was like, I just really like their characters together. And it's not like a relationship thing or anything like that. It was just, she wanted to help the city, and he knew that she was the right person to do it. And when she was freaking out, he was the one that was like, hey, you got to freaking step up. And that's kind of what led to that her really being there for that big battle. So just took me back to that moment where it's like, I just really like the two of these characters as an actual team, even when they have the crappiest of moments, like at the end of this episode. Really love the two of them together. But it was a fun episode overall. Pretty tragic ending, of course, with all the losses and just complete defeat after what seemed like a nice little victory there. But definitely want to know what you guys thought about this one, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. And of course, with the Strigoi having a complete takeover of the North Perimeter, a full-on, like, massive horde mode thing going at the end of the episode inside of Central Park, I definitely want to know what impact you guys think this is going to have on the city, and where they're going to be taking, and not only the rest of the season, but the rest of the series with this really big victory for the Strigoi, because I'm hoping that we get to see like I mentioned, the strigoi kind of going into a bunch of places that still have humans in them, around Central Park. I hope we get to see that, but I feel like we won't. I always feel like we should see some of like the crazy, crappy stuff that happens, but they always do like a time skip, and it's like, oh, that happened last night, and it's just back to the day with the main characters. And I always feel like they kind of skimp on some of the actual destruction. Like they always talk about it, like I think the last episode when they did the opening was tracking like, oh, it was a week has passed and all this crappiness has happened, and they use all this stock footage. But I'm always like, man, I wish they would actually show after those really big losses what happens to just the individual people sometimes. And just, it could just be a bunch of random clips, but I'd like to see it for the actual show, not like, oh, it's stock footage from this country or that country. So I doubt we will get it, but I'm sure they'll at least talk about it. Like, that happened and we've lost so many people over the night. We just sadly won't get to see all that, really crazy chaos. But maybe we will. I kind of doubt it because that's kind of just how they've done the show in general. It's like, oh, I expect to see this. And then it's like, oh man, last night sucked. We lost a bunch of people. So that's probably how it'll keep going. But that's kind of where I think it's headed. It'll just be a huge loss. And then with them having lost like the North Perimeter, I think this is kind of like the big moment where they're going to be pushed into sort of a corner. They're like, they have their checkpoints and stuff, and they have their safe zones. I think this is the point where they've lost too much, and this is going to be when, humans inside of New York are going to be shrunk into this little bitty circle, and that'll be, towards the end of the season where we get like that crazy, maybe victory during the last stand, who knows, but like I said, I want to know your speculations for what this loss is going to do for this show. And of course, I want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.